They called it a border skirmish, a minor clash in the mountains of eastern Anatolia. But in truth, it was the death knell of an empire. In the year 1071, deep in the rugged highlands near Lake Van, a Seljuk Turk commander, Alp Arslan, stood face to face with Romanos IV Diogenes, emperor of Byzantium, the self-proclaimed heir to Rome. One was a nomadic warrior, raised in the steppes, leading a confederation of horse archers. The other, a proud Roman in silk and gold, commanding legions that had ruled the world for 1,000 years. Everyone expected the Byzantines to win. But what happened next? Betrayal, arrogance, and a single fateful decision that would rip Anatolia, the heartland of the Eastern Roman Empire, from its grasp forever. This is not just the story of a battle. This is the moment the world tilted. The moment the Seljuks didn't just defeat an empire, they inherited a continent. Welcome to the betrayal that shattered an empire. The throne room of the great palace in Constantinople was never silent. Even in the dead of night, when the chandeliers of hammered gold dimmed and the mosaics of Christ Pantocrator watched from above, whispers slithered through the marble colonnades. And in the year 1068, those whispers had a name: Romanus. He was not born to rule. No purple chamber for him at birth, no sacred lineage of Macedonian emperors or golden-blooded Komnenoi. Romanos IV Diogenes was a soldier, a general forged in the brutal crucible of the eastern frontier, where Byzantine met Arab, Turk, and Armenian in endless skirmish. He knew the weight of a sword, the stench of open wounds, the silence after a battle when only the crows speak. And yet, here he stood, crowned Basileus, autocrator, ruler of the Romans, by the desperate will of a dying emperor and the scheming hand of a dowager empress. Eudokia Makrembolitisa, widow of Constantine X Ducas, had broken her vow of retirement to place Romanus upon the throne. Not for love, though they would marry, but for survival. The empire was bleeding, Arab raids, Norman wolves gnawing at Italy, and now from the east the Seljuk tide, swift, relentless, vanishing into the horizon like smoke. The old aristocracy recoiled. In the shadowed halls of their mansions along the Macy, the Dinatoi, the powerful, gathered in quiet fury. The Ducas family above all, they had ruled through blood and marriage for decades. And now a strategos from the provinces, a man of rough speech and soldierly habits, wore the crown they believed was theirs by birthright. Romanus knew he was an outsider. He felt it in the cold bows, the delayed responses to his edicts, the way court eunuchs lingered too long at council doors. He wore the jeweled laurels of office, but he walked among enemies. The bureaucracy, that vast, whispering machine of scribes and tax collectors, obeyed him in word, but not in loyalty. And the army, divided, riddled with faction. Generals bought with Duca's gold wore Romanus's colors, but their hearts beat for another house. So he made a decision, not as a politician, but as a general. He would do what emperors before him had done to secure their legitimacy. Win a victory, not just any victory, a conquest. He would march east, crush the Seljuk Turks, reclaim the lost themes of Anatolia, and return in triumph. He would prove beyond doubt that a soldier could rule better than a courtier. But beneath the surface, the ground was already shifting. The Ducas family did not rage. They did not protest. They waited. Michael VII, the young Duca's heir, lingered in the wings, quiet, bookish, beloved by the clergy and the city mob. And around him a network of officials, bishops, and officers began to move. Not with swords, but with letters, with silence, with patience. Romanus, unaware, prepared his campaign. He summoned troops from Thrace, from Antioch, from the Armenian highlands. He demanded supplies, horses, siege engines. But the warehouses in Nicaea were mysteriously understocked. The tax rolls from the west arrived late, or not at all. Commanders delayed mustering. Excuses piled like autumn leaves. Still, he pressed on. In the spring of 1071, the imperial army began its march, a vast, glittering serpent of steel and silk winding across the Anatolian plateau. The emperor rode at its head, cloaked in purple, believing he was leading a rebirth. But behind him, in the capital, a single scroll was sealed with dark wax and the crest of a coiled serpent, the sigil of the Ducas. A courier slipped through the gate of Carisius under cover of night. His destination? The forward camps. His message? Not to the enemy, but to a general in Romanus' own army. Let him march, it read. Let him fight. And when the time comes, let him fall. Ifar, they called him Alp Arslan, the heroic lion, but peace was his first weapon. Far to the east, beyond the Taurus Mountains, beyond the scorched riverbeds and wind-carved canyons, where Byzantine maps simply wrote, "Here be Turks," a different court stirred beneath a sky of endless blue. In the mobile capital of the Seljuk Sultanate, a city of silk tents and fluttering banners on the high plateau of Armenia, Sultan Alp Arslan stood alone at dawn, facing Mecca. He was not the brute the Byzantines painted, no savage with a blood-stained scimitar. He was a man of 39, with sharp, hawk-like eyes, a close-cropped beard streaked with early gray, and a voice that carried both steel and poetry. A scholar of fiqh and tawhid, he had studied under the greatest theologians of Nishapur. He quoted Persian verse before battle. He wept when his enemies showed courage, and he believed, truly believed, that God had placed him not to destroy, but to order. The Seljuk Empire was not an empire of stone. It was one of movement, of tribes, caravans, and loyalties forged in loyalty, not law. His throne rested on the allegiance of Turkmen begs, warlike emirs who followed him not because he ruled by divine right, but because he led them to victory, justice, and plunder. Yet Alp Arslan dreamed of more. He wanted a sultanate that could stand beside Baghdad, Cairo, even Constantinople, not as a raiding horde, but as a caliphal power, a guardian of Islam, a builder of cities. And so, when news arrived that the Roman Emperor, Romanos Diogenes, was marching east, gathering an army said to number in the tens of thousands, Alp Arslan did not reach for his sword. He reached for a pen. For weeks, he had been returning from a grueling campaign in Transoxiana, where he had subdued rebellious governors and reasserted Seljuk authority over the Silk Road. His body bore the scars of that war. His treasury was drained. His tribal commanders were restless, demanding raids, not diplomacy. But Alp Arslan saw farther. He summoned his vizier, the brilliant Nizam al-Mulk, the architect of the Seljuk state, and dictated a letter. Not a challenge, not a threat, a proposal. Let there be peace. Let the border fortresses be respected. Let trade caravans pass unmolested. Let prisoners be exchanged. And if the emperor desires, let there even be alliance against their common enemies, the Fatimids in Egypt, the unruly Turkmen raiders who attacked without orders, the Armenian lords who played both sides like merchants. The envoys who carried the letter were not soldiers, they were scholars. Dressed in simple robes, bearing scrolls sealed with the Sultan's tugra, they crossed the frontier under safe conduct, their only weapons the words of the Quran and the logic of statecraft. They reached Romanos' camp near the fortress of Manzikert, and were met not with honor, but with mockery. The emperor, surrounded by his proud strategoi, read the letter once and tossed it aside. "Does a wolf negotiate with a shepherd?" he sneered. The envoys were stripped of their seals, chained like common bandits, and sent back on donkeys, a deliberate insult. One had his beard shorn, another was spat upon. When the envoys finally reached Alp Arslan's tent, trembling and humiliated, silence fell over the court. The emirs roared for war, swords were drawn, blood must be repaid in blood. But Alp Arslan did not move. He took the torn letter from the lead envoy's hands. He smoothed the creases. He read every line again, slowly, quietly. Then he stood, walked to the fire, and cast the letter into the flames. The court held its breath, and the Sultan spoke, not in rage, but in sorrow. "If the emperor of the Romans will not have peace, he said, his voice cutting through the night like a blade. Then let God decide who is worthy of Anatolia. No war cry followed, no drums, only the crackle of fire and the unblinking gaze of a man who now believed the battle was not his to begin, but God's to judge. An army marches on its stomach, but this one marched on lies. The Anatolian plateau in spring was no land of triumph. It was a vast, sun-scorched expanse of rock and thorn, where water vanished into the earth and the wind carried the dust of forgotten battles. Here the Byzantine army, once a proud column of 10,000 men, glittering in lamellar armor, banners snapping in the dry air, began to fray. Romanos IV Diogenes rode at its head, still cloaked in imperial purple, still issuing orders with the confidence of a commander who believed victory was earned through will. But beneath the surface, the rot had already set in. Supplies promised from the granaries of Caesarea and Amorium never arrived. The wagons that did come were half empty, their drivers muttering of delays and lost records in the provincial bureaus. Bureaus loyal, everyone knew, to the Ducas faction. The bread turned moldy, the wine was watered, the horses grew thin, their ribs pressing against their hides like the bars of a cage. Worse were the scouts. Day after day, riders returned with frantic reports. Turkish horsemen seen near Aklat. A raid on the supply train. Arrows fired from the hills at dusk. Romanos ordered pursuit, but the enemy always vanished. No bodies, no camps, no tracks leading anywhere. The Turkmen were ghosts, striking, then melting into the highlands like mist. Or were they even there at all? Whispers began to spread through the ranks. Did we really see them? Or did someone just want us to think they were near? Officers argued. Men slept with weapons in hand. Trust, already thin, began to crack. And then there was Andronikos Doukas, cousin of the deposed Michael VII, nephew of the old emperor, commander of the elite Optimatoi, on the right wing. He moved through the army like a shadow, polite, obedient in word, but his actions delayed, hesitant. When Romanos ordered a forced march to cut off a reported Seljuk detachment, Andronikos claimed his men were exhausted. When scouts were needed, he could not spare riders. When supply routes were questioned, he shrugged, as if the failure of the bureaucracy was beyond his concern. Romanos confronted him once, beneath a flapping imperial tent. "You are a ducas," the emperor said, his voice low, "but you serve the throne. Do not forget that." Andronikos bowed, smiled, said nothing. That night, a junior officer, a Thracian named Leon Cassianos, was inspecting the rear guard when he found something buried beneath a cairn of stones, a wax tablet sealed with a broken cipher. Inside, a map, not just any map, a detailed sketch of the Byzantine army's formation, supply depots, and projected route toward Lake Van. And beside it, a list of names, commanders, scouts, even the emperor's personal guards. All marked, all known. Leon ran to the command tent, but when he arrived, the duty officer, a man with close ties to Andronikos, took the tablet, glanced at it, and said coldly, "Old rumors, probably a Turkish trick." Then he tossed it into the fire. Leon stared as the evidence curled into ash. He said nothing, but that night he watched from the darkness as a lone rider slipped away from camp. Not toward the enemy lines, but westward, toward Constantinople. No one stopped him. No one even looked up, and deep in the heart of the army, the truth hung in the air, unspoken but undeniable. They were not just marching into enemy territory. They were marching into a trap, and the men who said it wore the same colors as they did. They saw smoke on the horizon, but was it campfires or a trap? It was the 8th day of August, 1071. The air over the highlands near Lake Van was thin and sharp, the sun a white fire in a cloudless sky. Dust clung to the lips of men and horses alike. The Byzantine army, weary and strung out along the rocky passes, had marched for weeks through silence, rumor, and ambush, only to find nothing but scorched earth and abandoned villages. And then, at last, smoke. A thick, slow column rising from the valley ahead. Tense, campfires, the unmistakable sprawl of an enemy encampment. Scouts confirmed it. Arslan was there. The Seljuk host had been cornered. Relief swept through the ranks, then triumph. Romanos stood atop a rocky outcrop, squinting into the distance. There it was, the moment he had gambled everything for. The Sultan, caught off guard, no mountains to vanish into, no rivers to cross, just open ground, perfect for the cataphracts, the heavy cavalry of the empire, to charge and crush. At last, he said, we fight on our terms. Orders were given. The army advanced in formation. The tagmata of the center under Romanos, the left wing under Bryennios, the right under Andronikos Doukas. The Pecheneg archers moved ahead as skirmishers. The Varangian guard, axes gleaming, held close to the emperor. The drums beat. The buchanai sounded. The earth trembled beneath 10,000 feet. They reached the camp by midday and found it empty, not abandoned. Empty. Tents still stood, silken wool, richly embroidered, some still warm from the sun. Cooking pots held half-eaten food. Horses grazed in makeshift corrals, but no soldiers, no sentries, no sign of flight, no tracks, no drop gear, no panic, just silence. Romanos dismounted, stepping into the Sultan's own tent. A Persian rug, a Quran on a low table, a cup of tea still steaming. Impossible. He turned to his generals. Where are they? No one answered. Then from the scouts, frantic reports. Movement to the north. Horsemen on the high ground. They're behind us. The truth crashed down like a collapsing dome. This was no camp. It was bait. The real Seljuk army, thousands strong, swift and silent, had not waited. It had moved. While the Byzantines marched toward smoke and shadow, Arslan had circled wide through the night, using local guides, slipping through hidden passes, flanking them completely. The camp was a decoy, a masterpiece of deception, designed to lure the empire's greatest army into the open, disoriented and divided. And now they were surrounded. Romanos ordered a retreat, a disciplined withdrawal, ranks closed, standards high. But the land itself seemed to turn against them. The narrow passes choked the columns. The cataphracts, too heavy for the rocky terrain, slowed the advance. The Pechenegs on the flanks began to falter, picked off by sudden volleys of Turkish arrows from the cliffs above. And then, the sound, faint at first, a whisper on the wind, then louder. A rhythmic thunder, growing, converging from multiple directions. Hooves, thousands of them, coming not from one side, but from all. The Seljuk horse archers emerged like ghosts from the haze, not in a frontal charge, but in swirling Parthian formations, firing, vanishing, reappearing. Arrows fell like black rain. Men screamed. Horses collapsed. The left wing buckled. And in the center, Romanos stood, gripping his sword, staring into the dust and smoke, realizing too late that the battle had already begun, and he had already lost the advantage.